And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is the author Todd Wilcox, who has had a long-time fascination with alternative healing, consciousness expansion, and human potential. Todd is also known as the Slipstream Shaman and writes about how you can learn to use your own natural abilities in quantum healing. Todd, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm excited to be here. Can't wait.
Well, Todd, how did you get the name Slipstream Shaman in the first place?
Well, the funny part about that is that's the name of the book. And somewhere organically, people just started calling me that. So it wasn't anything planned or anything thought out. But yeah, the name of the book, Slipstream Shaman. And eventually through the different interviews I did and talking with people, they started calling me that, and it just kind of felt natural and normal. So I went with it, and we continue to go with that.
Was there a particular event in your life that acted as a catalyst that set you on your path as an energy healer?
There was. So about 15 years ago, maybe a little longer, I was on a paranormal group, and when you're doing that kind of stuff, going ghost hunting, looking for UFOs, those kind of things, you run into other groups and you get to know people in other groups. And one day I had a call from another group inviting me to join a secondary group that they were forming that was going to go help people that nobody else could help. So if there was a haunted location that other teams couldn't help the people with, our group would go in and help them. And it would be just one or two people from various groups. And there was about seven or eight of us at the time from various groups got together, and we were going to go help people. And the question I asked when this thing was formed was, I really want to help. I want to be a part of this, but what's going to be different? Your group wasn't able to help them. My group wasn't able to help them. What's going to be different with us? And so we started talking about different things that we could do to help people and what we needed to learn. And some things they threw out there was demonology. We needed to learn about demons. And I wasn't entirely sure that was the case. But when they spoke about bringing a shaman in to teach us energy work for protection, I thought, that's really a beautiful thing for us to know to go help these people. And so we lined up a shaman to come teach us. And the shaman was doing a wonderful job showing us how to find our energy, bringing our hands together, finding this energy. But she was describing a completely different experience than what I was having. She was talking about your energy needs to be red. It needs to be hot, and it looks like this. Well, mine wasn't like that. Mine was light blue, and it was cold. And mine kind of looked like a radiating ball in my hands. And it just wasn't what she was describing. And I found myself becoming frustrated because the experience I was having was not what she was talking about. And the more she would tell me what it should be when it was different than mine, the less I could focus on what she was saying. So I just kind of backed off during that training and paid attention to what she was telling us, then worked on it on my own. And so once I got home, I started working on the energy work, found my energy, started to manipulate it. I decided I needed to cover myself in it when I would go on ghost hunts and things like that, paranormal investigations. I would cover myself in this energy for protection. I would cover the people I was with for protection. And that was really where it started, was in that moment with that shaman, learning how to access my energy. But backing that up even farther, as I was working with my energy for a few years, I finally found my purpose. I'd been searching for my purpose for decades. And one day during meditation with using my energy, the two words came to me, and it was to help. And so I think I was always on this path to help people. But it was during that training that I really realized how I was going to do it, and that was with the energy work.
I was taking a look at your website, and what I found really interesting there is when you talked about finding your path, it wasn't some huge event that changed the world. It was just, to me, seemed something subtle. Can you talk more about
Yes.
that?
Yeah. And so I always thought, like you said, something that's just going to change the world. I always thought when I found my purpose, my path, that everything would open up for me. It would be something glorious, and I would just be, everything would open up, and I would immediately have success. I would be a champion of industry, or I would fly up a corporate ladder, or I'd have a gigantic, huge business. But it wasn't that type of path that I was supposed to be on, and it was just really simple to help. And the funny part is, even though it's simple, doesn't mean it's easy. Sometimes we associate the two, simple and easy. There's been a lot of work, a lot of development involved. And as I find more and more ways to help, it's always rewarding. It's always exciting, and I really can't wait until next year or the year after to see what evolves. I'm really excited with the way people are responding to the book and some of the ideas that they're giving me as they're using the procedures that I teach, and where we go with that. And one of the exciting things about this book is I wrote it with the intention that you would be able to read it in 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
I didn't want it to be something that you sat on your bookshelf and showed off. I wanted you to be able to get involved with it. I've been in too many people's libraries that had hundreds of these great books, and I'd heard about many of them. And I asked them how many you've read, and it was always one or two. They would start reading a book that had so much information in it that they would just clog, and they didn't know how to proceed, and they didn't know how to use it all. And so I wanted to keep this simple, keep the process as easy and fast, and help people get results fast. You could literally, within 45 minutes of having the book in your hand, be working on the processes. If you want to read about my experiences and get more examples, you're looking 2 to 3 hours. But really, I wanted it to go very fast and get people involved as quickly as possible.
Well, 2 to 3 hours is very quick. How many pages are in the book?
There's a little over 100 pages. And some of the books that, if you want to think about it, for people that have read business books, it's like reading the 1 Minute Manager, one of those Who Moved My Cheese, those kind of books where you go through it fairly fast and get right to the event. I didn't write it in that style, but it's about that same size. It's, I believe, 24,000 words, whereas Stephen King novels like 100 and something. So it's fast, gets to the point, and gets you on your way to working with your energy. And that's the whole key. I want people to be able to use this process, not only use it, but evolve it. And that's where this was starting a minute ago. I love it when people are able to take what I teach them and make it their own. As I hear about different people working with their energy, nobody's looks like mine, which is what I expected. Everybody has their own energy. One lady I work with has energy that's a golden color and kind of moves like honey. My energy evolved from this blue energy that was fairly stable looking energy to a very, very frenetic energy that looks like a sparkler and almost looks like the picture of the book. It almost looks like this. Like if you shine a light through a diamond, that's what my energy looks like now. It moves a lot. Other people's have various colors streaming out of it. And so everybody has different energy, and I encourage that. I want people to find a way, use the processes I show you, but also find your own way. For those people that have watched The River Runs Through It, it reminds me of when the dad teaches the boys how to fly fish, and he's got the metronome clicking the rhythm they're supposed to use, and they're learning how to fly fish at a certain rhythm. And during a fishing trip, the youngest brother broke out on his own rhythm. He found his own way, his own path. And that's what I look at with this. I want to show people what I do, teach them how to access it, and then run wild. Go crazy with it and find your own path and share it with us. I want to have a big community of people doing this kind of work, sharing what they're doing, sharing what it's evolving into, and how we can help not just ourselves, not just our own community, but eventually the whole planet and maybe even bigger.
How are you and basically anyone else able to perceive their energy and what color it is?
So when in the book, you'll learn how to access it. And in your palms, you have, some people call them chakras, some people call it energy receptors. But as you're putting your hands together, you're going to start feeling something between it. You might feel warmth, you might feel cold, but then you close your eyes and you just kind of let it go. And like I said, some people will have warm energy or hot energy. Some people have cold like mine, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. One's not better than the other. It's just what yours is. And those colors will come to you as well. It might be a white light, it might be yellow, it might be blue or orange or sparkly like mine is turned into, or gray or black. And no color is wrong. It's just your color. So that's how you would perceive it and start working with it. And once you can access it between your hands, you'll find that you can easily start moving it around. You can expand it to protect your house. You can expand it to protect your state if you wanted to. You can expand it and send it to your relatives. Every morning and every evening, I do a process where I will get in touch with my energy. I surround myself with it. I surround where I work with it. I surround my family's homes. And then I expand it out over the states that they live in, just to give extra good, healthy, clean energy to them, so that their day will go as well as possible.
Do the colors or the temperature of the energy mean anything?
Not that I'm aware of. They could, and on a bigger level of meaning and a bigger level of understanding, they may. It may signify, like cold may signify a healer, or hot may signify a warrior. I really don't know. And that's something, as we get more and more people involved and start collecting some data on that, that's a really interesting question. The colors, I would imagine, do mean something. They may be where we're at in our development. It may be if your color's red, you've been reincarnated twice. If it's green, you've been reincarnated 4 times. Who knows? There's so many things that we need to look at. It's still pretty new, but I would imagine there is some meaning to it. I just don't have access to it.
If I go back to you and your purpose, was there any event in your life that confirmed your purpose?
That is a wonderful question. And what I've looked at is I've probably always known that my purpose was to help. I went into the military with the idea of helping. It wasn't it wasn't for the adrenaline rush of jumping out of a helicopter or blazing with a machine gun. It was about helping. I pictured myself being the voice of reason, so that a town wouldn't get torched, to help that way, to help people that were in a place that they didn't need to be. I'm always the guy going the wrong way. When everybody's running out of a building because of a problem, I'm running in. So it's always been to help. I just didn't realize it. And, always the one getting in the middle of chaos and trying to calm things down. I've always been that way, but I didn't realize that was my purpose and place here was to help. But once I found out, I was able to look back on events and realize that I'd always been acting that way.
In your book, you write about the quantum room. Can you tell us what that is?
Absolutely. So as I was working with my energy, I was originally just covering myself with it, covering people in a house that we were doing a paranormal investigation on, covering my friends, covering my family with energy for protection. One day, as I'm working with the energy, I don't know exactly what happened. I may have asked a question and it took me to it, or it may just have organically come about. But I went to a place that was, for me, my quantum room is a place that started out as just gray mist moving around. It would be similar to being inside a storm cloud. If you can picture that, you couldn't see a floor, you couldn't see the walls or ceiling, but there was just mist moving around you. You knew you were in a confined space, but you couldn't tell really how big it was or what it was made out of. It was just misty. It has since evolved into where there's an opening in it, and I can see a meadow outside, and I will leave the misty part of it and go sit in a meadow at times, grass, sunshine, a little bit of a breeze, beautiful place to spend time. Still part of that same room, but it started out as just a misty place. When I'm teaching people to find their room, it's been everything you can imagine. One person, it was the inside of his favorite car. Another lady has some stone steps that she walks down to a pond. She can sometimes float in the pond while she's in it. That's her room. Other people, several people are underwater. There's a couple that are in space in one way or another, like one on the moon, one just floating in space is their quantum room. And I think with those people, because they were actively planning on developing a room, they were able to design something, where mine just happened. And that's what it ended up looking like, was just the mist. So when you're in this place, you're really a superhero. You can do just about anything you want. And that quantum room is where I invite people to come in for healings. So if somebody requests a healing from me, I will ask them to come to me in that quantum room. Now it's metaphysical. They're not physically there. Their essence comes to me. And that's where we do the work to help people with healings and make changes in their life, is in the quantum room. And then I teach them how to create their quantum room and what to do once they're there.
Do you feel that your quantum healing is more about healing yourself or healing other people?
Beautiful question. And I would have to say more about healing other people, because I have had so much more success helping others by using this process than I do when I'm working on my own development. And so I don't know if I have my own block that's keeping me from not doing as much healing as on myself as I would like to or need to, or if it's one of those things where it really takes other people's energy to help you heal. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but by far, I've helped many, many, many people with so many things that, it would have to be about the other people. And, anything from health issues to emotional problems to preparing for things, getting rid of a block that keeps them from making the move to the next level, whether it's at work or relationships or whatever, getting rid of those blocks. And I'm much more effective and helpful for others than I am for myself.
How does your work differ from things like Reiki or other healing touch modalities?
So some of those modalities can work over space and time. Mine does. It doesn't matter where you're at in the world. If you want me to do a healing, I can do a healing with you. I've worked with numerous people in Europe, in Canada, all across the United States. And so space doesn't matter. How far away we are doesn't matter. Time is different in the quantum room. So many times I'm able to help people. There's a thing called Causality we can talk about too, but I'm able to work with other energy healers. I like to work with Reiki healers when we combine with somebody, because of the energy that Reiki brings. That just supercharges what I'm doing. So it's like if you've got a normal car and you put a great big carburetor on it and everything that makes it bigger and stronger, the Reiki kind of does that with what I'm doing. It's a wonderful team up, and I love working with Reiki practitioners. But this is hands off. It can take place in other states, and you don't even have to be involved. You can be at work while I do the process, and it works just as well as if you know it's time to do it and we sit down at the same physical time and work on it. So it's kind of an odd modality, because it isn't tied down to space or time.
You mentioned retrocausality. What's that?
Yes. That is one of the things that I absolutely love. Now, within the paranormal world, and you talk to a lot of people that do paranormal things, there's not a lot of things we can do to test it and prove it. Many ghost hunting people say we use the scientific method. Well, they don't. They're using products and scientific tools at times, but they're not following a scientific method, which is all about replication. And so there's not a lot in the paranormal that can be shown to work every time. Retrocausality is one of the exceptions. And what that is you're doing we'll just call it a healing. You're doing a healing that took place in the past. And when I heard about this, what had happened was some researchers went to a hospital and they were given access to people's records, patients' records. And they took records that were 10 years old or older with people that had a specific blood disease. And they just took those records and randomly split them into two piles. On one pile, they gave it energy. They gave it positive energy. They prayed over it. They did everything positive for these records of the people, and they did nothing for the others. Then they started looking at the results of what happened 10 years past, and they found that the pile that they had separated and gave positive energy and prayer and those kind of things to, the people were sick for a shorter length of time. They healed up stronger over time. The different metrics that they used to look at how people heal, everything was better for the pile that they did the prayer and the energy work with. And so you can cause something to change even if it's in the past, and that's retrocausality, and that's been tested multiple times. It was when I heard about it, I had to pull over. I was driving on the freeway, and it struck me so hard that I just had to pull over, and that was probably 10 years before I even started working on this. So it's something that I always look at, something I always try to do. And the reason Slipstream is in the name of the book and what I do is because I want people to picture you're driving down the freeway and a semi goes past you and it pushes you off to the side as it goes by, and then it gets past you and it sucks you back over towards it. That air around the semi is creating a slipstream. Then if you get behind that semi and you were going 65 before, we'll pretend we're going the speed limit. If you're going 65 before, you get behind that semi that's going 70 and you stay in the slipstream, you'll find that you can go 70 miles an hour with that truck and use less fuel, less energy. Your RPMs go down because you're in that slipstream. And so what we do with these changes we make changes that affect your past and your present. And the stuff that affects the past pushes you forward into the present and your future, to where you have great changes taking place all the way along your timeline. And that was why I decided to go a slipstream on it, because of the speed. Traditional shaman work can take days, weeks, years. And this is something that I wanted to have happen virtually instantaneously. And that's where the slipstream name came into it.
Are you also involved in remote viewing?
On accident. So I didn't realize I was, but yes. The work I do many times will fall into the category of associative remote viewing. And this is one of the most beautiful, wonderful things that's ever happened to me during the healings I've done. I work with different nurses and doctors, and I'll get a call every once in a while from people that do organ transplants. And I got a call from a nurse, and they asked me, "Hey, can you send some energy to this patient, help this patient with some healing? It's a little boy. We might not get him through the night. He had received a couple organs, and I won't tell you the names or what organs or anything like that, because It needs to be anonymous. But so I reached out, and I can do that. I always want to get some kind of permission, whether it's from a parent or whatever, for people, or if they give me their own permission, or sometimes if somebody's in a coma, I don't get permission, I do it anyway. But for the most part, I always get permission, and I can find the people through the ones that give me permission. So this nurse asked me to do this. I reached out to her in the quantum room, and then I was able to go to this little boy who had the transplants. And as I'm working with him, I'm giving him energy. And maybe in a minute, I'll describe what I usually do. This was a little different, but So I'm giving him energy. I can see him getting his color back, getting stronger, breathing better. He's smiling. And as I'm doing this, another little boy walks into the room, into the quantum room, and he is very gray, very sallow. He's kind of leaning down, has no energy, no strength. He's just standing there looking at us. Once I felt comfortable that I'd helped get the first boy's energy flowing right so that his healing could start. And that's really what was happening with him. We filled him with love, gave him lots of good energy, cleaned things up so that his energy was flowing correctly in his body. And then I started working with the second boy that was in the room, and he was so gray and tired looking that I just sent love, tons of love energy to him. And as I saw him building up and getting stronger, I talked to him a little bit. And for some reason, I thought I need to know your name. And so I asked, what is your name? And this, I won't tell you the actual thing he said again, because I'm anonymous. I'll use a different letter, but he said C. And so I'm thinking Cedric, Charlie. I'm going through any C name I can think of, trying to figure out what his name is. And he's shaking his head, C. We keep doing the work. As I give him more and more energy, all of a sudden things change with him. He goes from being tired and gray to having good color, pink again, strong again. And then energy started leaving from him. And it felt to me like the energy that was leaving him was going to his family to start healing them. He was the donor. And so once he had the energy, he was healing his family so that they could get through this traumatic event of losing him. Even though they knew that he saved somebody else, still it's awful to lose a child. And so he was sending love, healing energy to his family to heal them. And we continued to do that. He kept telling me, see. And we finished. The next day, I contacted that nurse. The boy who had received the organs was doing great. He was up walking around. He was going to be discharged the next day. He completely had a change overnight. And I said, I don't know if you can tell me this, but as I was working, this other boy came in. And I asked the name, and he was telling me C. And I said, is the donor by chance named Charlie, or I started saying some C names, and the nurse giggled a little bit and said, his name's Cece. So he was telling me his name, but I wasn't interpreting it right. And of course, it was a different letters, but I missed it. And so that was something that drove home that you don't want to interpret too much. Just accept what you're seeing and don't try to figure out what it means. And when I tell you a story in a minute, you'll understand more what I mean by that. But that would be an example of associative remote viewing, where you're having contact with something and getting some kind of information. So I didn't realize I was doing it, but yes, I've done that multiple times where I've had what would be considered associative remote viewing.
You talk about polymedala, and that is a phrase that I've never heard before. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, and you haven't heard from it because it's something I dreamed up. What it means is many healings. And so what that can mean is one healing session that will heal multiple people, going to the people, or one session that heals multiple afflictions. So there might be a polymedela that you do that is aimed at a group. We had a couple years ago when we were wearing the masks during COVID, there was a group that wanted to fight, that wore the mask, that wanted to fight the people that weren't wearing the mask. And there was a group not wearing the mask that wanted to fight the people that were wearing them. And there was a lot of conflict. And I managed a retail outlet, and there were rumors that there was going to be a demonstration at the store that I manage. And I started doing a polymedela for the people that were going to do those protests. I wanted to calm things down. I wanted to give them better resources, make sure that they felt like their voices were heard. And so I'm doing the polymedela for about a week, getting ready for this day to come up. And the night before their demonstration was supposed to happen, the mask mandates changed to where businesses weren't forced to tell people to wear masks, and it was people's choices. And that just, when that announcement was made, all that energy was just sucked out. The two groups didn't want to fight anybody anymore. They didn't want to fight each other. And again, I don't know how big a part I played in that, but as you do these healings, not consequences, but coincidences happen. Coincidences like that, they start piling up, and at some point you have to say, okay, it wasn't just random, it wasn't just an accident. The things I'm doing are helping, and maybe I'm that straw that breaks the camel's back, and so everything works right. And that's probably what happened in that instance. But again, it was one of those coincidences that just such a big event stopped just before it was going to happen, after we were doing the process, the polymedela. I recently did a polymedela for road rage because I am a bad person behind the wheel. I yell at a lot of people. I think everybody's cutting me off on purpose. I think, people are doing stuff to make me mad. And I did a polymedela that was for me and for everybody. And that's been about 2 months ago. And there's been just a gigantic change in my behavior driving. And what I've noticed with other people as well, I don't see the people cutting each other off back and forth. I used to watch on the freeway as I was driving. I would watch 2 or 3 cars like chasing each other and pushing each other and those kind of things. I don't see that anymore. I notice it. I don't get frustrated with the people staying in the left lane when I'm trying to speed. And just a lot of changes have happened. And it might just be my perception, but I think it's touching other people around us. And so a polymedela is a mini healing. And I try to do those on my podcast each week and reach out to whatever group. It just kind of, the spirit lets me know where to go each time when I do it.
While you were helping the boy named C, you encountered a non-corporeal boy, the donor. Do you ever encounter other entities that, maybe dark entities out there?
Yes. And so there's things that I encounter when I do the healings. The first group I call companions. And these things started out as something positive that was trying to help us. And so picture you're 8 years old and you do something and you hurt your bicep. So you take a rope or a belt or something, put it around your bicep, and it makes it feel better. That compression makes it feel better. What happens if you leave that on for a week? What happens if you leave that on for a month or a year or 5 years? That's kind of how a companion works. It started out as something that was helping us, but as we grew and developed and changed, it became something that became a problem. Then we have a thing that I call a parasite, and that usually started out with a bad intention. And that's why I was focused on road rage. I was on a show like yours, and we started talking about road rage, and it hit me that all that evil thought that we're putting out there, all that frustration we're putting out there, all that negative energy we're putting out there, could become energy sucks, energy parasites that get on people and take their energy and weigh them down and slowly erode that person. And so that's the second type. The biggest group is the companions, and that's probably 95% of what I encounter as a companion. About 4%, or maybe a little more than 4%, is the parasites. And then a very small percent is something that I would call otherworldly, something just pure bad. And what I've run into is some alien looking things, some insect looking things, and also a gigantic, I don't even know what to call it. It's something like the size of a sun with billions of tendrils coming out of it, taking energy from people. And I'm not sure how I'm going to work with that. I've run into it a couple times and separated people from it that were having energy drawn from them. But I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with that thing in the long run. So yes, there are some things out there like that. I do run into what people call the Hat Man or shadow people. I call it the Watching Man. And what that is an entity that's about 6 feet tall, maybe a little taller, kind of big built, uh, usually has a hat. You know it has a face, but you can't see it. It's wearing a long coat. And they're usually just like a shadow. They're black or dark gray or dark blue. And usually they just watch. And I've encountered many of those while I'm doing that. And again, they're just watching. They're curious what's going on. I was doing a cleanse on a house, a healing for a house one time, and there was 3 of them that would walk alongside me. Now, when I say I was walk beside me, this is metaphysical. I brought the house into my quantum room, but they were there to see what was going on. And I do see those things quite often when I'm doing this work, but they've never been a problem for me.
Were the energy parasites actual sentient entities, or is it like a parasite of emotion?
So the ones that I call parasites would be something that evolved out of an emotion, I believe. Those other things, those otherworldly things, I think are some kind of an entity. But the parasite ones that I talked about, I think those started as just a bad thought that somehow was able to grasp onto somebody and start feeding on them. And I don't run into a lot of those, but from time to time they're out there.
Would those otherworldly beings be the same things that Catholic priests would conduct exorcisms for?
I think so. I do believe so. And and through the ages we've called them demons. We've the shamans have had different names for them. Each tribes had different names for them, but I think they were all the same kind of thing. I remember as a little kid watching witch doctors and different things, and really being concerned about demons and spirits and zombie things and that. But I do believe what I'm encountering with some of these things are just that interpretation. I don't interpret them as a demon, but for whatever reason, 300, 400 years ago, we decided to call these demons. And so, yeah, I think that is what the church would do an exorcist on, the really bad ones.
When you're saying otherworldly, do you think that means that they're living in another dimension or the astral realm, or do you think they're more like aliens on UFOs?
I think there's both. I've encountered both. I'll tell you a story about an alien one in a second, but the really the big ones I think are in another dimension and reaching through somehow. That hat man, that watching man I was talking about, I think that's a dimensional being. And I that thing with the tentacles coming out to get energy, I think is a dimensional being also. But the alien part, I have Ron, and he's in the book. The chapter's called Ron. And Ron was having heart trouble. It's been about 6 years ago now, and he was on the verge of death. He was told a couple different times, "Get your affairs in order. Your heart's failing." And I would do energy healing with him, and he would get better, but it wouldn't last. And I did about 3 healings with him that we had some progress and things would get better, but it would go bad again. And I believe it was the 4th healing, I'm working with him, and I noticed that what I saw was this tube going into his back, and it was going into his back and straight to his heart. And I pulled the tube off him. Again, this is metaphysical. I wasn't there with Ron. There was no tube took this, but I'm in the quantum room. I pull that tube off, and I think, where does this go? And I look down the tube, and a part of the quantum room opens up, and there's this alien staring at me. And he had this gigantic triangle-shaped head. And we did one of those things like on ET where everybody yells because you're so startled. But then he sent this energy at me that knocked me out, knocked me unconscious. And when I came to, I was mad, and I went full Marine, and I went right back in, and I was going to get him. And he knocked me out again. So he knocks me out twice in less than an hour. And a few days later, I kept thinking, how am I going to get this? How am I going to make this thing stay away from Ron? What am I going to do with this? And I went back, and same result, knocked out. And I talked to a friend, and she says, well, how about you don't go in there guns blazing this time, Marine? You've learned that that's not working for you. Why don't you use your love team that you have? I have 3 different teams that help with the healing. I have a warrior team that finds the companions or the parasites and removes them. I have a love team that heals those parasites and companions, and also heals the person. And then we have a 7-generation team that comes in and just provides protection and love and connection for those people after we do the healing. And it's actually their generations. So I get the love team. We build up a bunch of energy, and as soon as I see that triangle guy, we shoot love at him, and we just keep shooting love at him, shooting it. And I can tell that he's not enjoying it. It's really hurting him. It's making him try to get away from us. And we did that for a while, and then I lost connection. And Ron felt good for about 6 months after that. And then he started failing again. And this time I went into the quantum room, and I asked my highest level guides. I have 3 guides that come to me that are otherworldly guides. And I asked them, how do I help Ron? And they had me sit down, and we're talking. And as we're talking, I'm getting bigger and stronger. My shoulders are getting huge. My arms are getting huge. My neck's getting huge. My legs are getting huge. Kind of like what happens with the Hulk, where he just gets big and huge. I'm sitting there getting bigger. I can feel more and more power, more and more strength. And then they just said some words to me. They said, tear, drive, push up, slam down, squash. And as soon as they said squash, the mist opened up. I saw the triangle guy. I reached forward and tore open the ship, did like a tackle, like you'd see on football, drove him, drive across his ship, and then slammed him into the ceiling, smashed him on the floor, and started smashing him into a ball. And then sent the whole thing to the sun and watched the whole thing burn up. And when I was writing the book, I was really torn on whether or not to share that or not. But I had to tell the truth. And as much as I want this to be nothing but positive and help, sometimes things like that are going to happen. And so that, I guess, would be like an exorcism. It was the only way I could keep that thing away from Ron and probably from other people. So I felt horrible sharing that kind of violence in a book that's about helping and healing, but I also felt like I had to be honest and share the whole truth.
Do you meditate? And if so, what type do you practice?
That is a wonderful question. So I've practiced most types of meditation. And what they all evolved into was me sitting down, trying to clear my mind for however many minutes, and then falling asleep. Meditation wasn't working for me. I would just relax and fall asleep. And once I got to the quantum room, I could start meditating. So I don't know if it has a name, but it's where I just allow thoughts and things to come to me. And it's where I'm able to interact with the universe. And so the meditation that I do, for me, has only worked inside the quantum room. But that's where I get my clarity, and that's where my purpose came to me. The to help, where I knew the answer of what my purpose was, and where I go to find clarity, and so it's not an exact meditation that I could say it's like Buddhist or anything like that. It's or transcendental or any of those. It's just me relaxing in the quantum room and allowing the universe to let me know what I need to know. And I don't fall asleep during it. So that's a win.
Now, you run a podcast like I do, and I'm assuming sometimes you talk about Bigfoot. So what is your opinion of what Bigfoot is?
Okay, thank you. Now, as I said before, I have 3 high-level guides that come to me. I also have two animal guides that help me that are a level down from them. And one of them actually is a Bigfoot. It's a female Bigfoot. I have a bull elk and a female Bigfoot are my spirit guides. And what I feel like Bigfoot is a dimensional being. When I got my spirit animal, when it came to me, I was on some mountains in Utah. I was alongside some mountains, and I can remember as I started to feel the Bigfoot being a part of me, I looked down this row of mountains, and I honestly felt I could go 20 miles in seconds. That I would just be able to, I don't know if I would call it a hop, but I would just be able to step outside this dimension and move along those mountains super fast and be 20, 30, 50 miles down in seconds or a blink of an eye, maybe a millionth of a second. And my feeling has been that they are not of our dimension. They visit here and they do things here, but they live and belong somewhere else. This is more of a vacation or a training, or hard to say exactly what they're doing here. I don't have a great grasp on that, but I do believe they step outside of our dimension. Too many times you see footprints in the snow that just stop and they're just gone. There's nowhere for it to go, but the footprint stopped. Now people say, well, you can back up and not mess up the prints, but you really can't because your foot's doing other things. You would leave damage when you're doing that. And if it's a hoax person, you're not going to fly off in a helicopter or anything like that. So I do believe they're dimensional beings that can come and go as they want. And I'm not exactly sure why they come visit us. But I've also talked to so many people that have had UFO experiences that I think there's some kind of tie-in there too. And I've talked to a number of people that have seen them on ships when they've been abducted and gone to ships. They see Bigfoot, or they'll see Bigfoot in a place that is a hotbed of UFOs. And so I believe that they're tied together, and maybe the UFOs are also dimensional.
What are your thoughts on near-death experiences?
So one of the things when I started my radio show, one of the things I really wanted to find out was what happens to our pets. That was one of the bucket lists of guests. And so I wanted to have some psychics on and talk about pets and talk about near death. And once I had firm belief that there is an afterlife and that the pets are a part of it, I was able to relax a lot. And then one time in meditation, I was picturing some of my dogs, and many of the dogs that I've lost over the years that have passed away help me in the healing that I do. They're a part of the warrior team. But when you look into a dog's eyes, there is no doubt in my mind that they have life, and it's a life that goes beyond that physical body. And with near death, I had an experience in high school. I was having a hernia operation, and this was back in the 70s. And during the operation, I left my body and I was sitting on the other side of the room watching what was happening. And when I left my body, I assumed that my body died because my surgeon is screaming at the anesthesiologist. The anesthesiologist is screaming back at him, and they're frantically doing things. And one of the nurses runs out of the room. The other one's over and looked like she was about to start doing CPR on me. And it didn't last for a long time. I didn't see a tunnel. I didn't have a visitation, but I got sucked back into my body. When I asked the doctor about it on the rounds the next day, that was when you were in the hospital for a hernia, you were there for a week or more. It's not the outpatient process that it is now. And the first day my surgeon came in, I asked him, hey, what happened during this? And I described it. He went white, absolutely white. And he says, no, that didn't happen. And and I never saw him again. And there was other doctors that came and checked on me after that. That doctor never came back. And so I'm convinced that I had a near-death experience there. And it probably didn't last long enough for me to see many of the things that people talk about. But I have had the opportunity to talk to some of the best people on the planet that have studied near-death experiences. And I truly believe that we do that and that we have a beautiful to go to when we're done. And I also think that we have some control over it. as you are studying near-death experiences, people that have a very strong religious background, a very strong religious love, their experiences tend to go along the same lines as what they learn in their religion. They go see Jesus, they go see Muhammad, they go see Buddha. Or people that don't really go to church maybe go to a meadow or something. And so I think we have control over that, much like in the quantum room where you can just pretty much do anything you want. I think when you're in that place that we'll call heaven, for lack of a better term, I think you control it and you create your own heaven based on what you like and love.
Do you think that your NDE changed you in any way or gave you abilities that you didn't have prior?
It might have. It may have opened things up. I do try to think back and see what changed, but I don't recall like a giant change taking place. But it might have been one of those small kernels that was placed and started, and so it may have taken a while for it to grow and take charge. You know, they talk about bamboo is just a tiny little plant for 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and then it grows 90 feet in a year. And so maybe something like that took place with me, where I didn't have the huge epiphany that some people do, or see the massive change. But I know that I've always seen things people didn't see, the watching man, ghost type things that, you know, I've always been more in tune, and I'm probably got a little bit more in tune after that NDE.
Have you ever helped anybody who has claimed to be abducted by aliens?
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. Ron has been abducted many times, and he's actually one of the people. If you search YouTube and put abductee pilot, he comes up many times. He's one of the people that have been abducted to train as a pilot, and yeah, I worked with Ron. I've worked with a number of other people that have been abductees, and really from my perspective, the things I do, they don't have the things that we work on aren't really different. Ron had that alien that was trying to kill him. Oh, something I forgot to tell you is, after I told Ron about my experience with the triangle-headed alien, he says, you know, there's something I've never told you, is that about 5 years ago, I went to a hypnotherapist and they did a regression. And during that, he had what's called an ab reaction, where you just freak out. You're under hypnosis and you just lose it. And he had that, and he was screaming that there was a triangle shape, an alien with a triangle head trying to kill him. And I had no idea about that. And so, again, you know, I was talking about coincidences stacking up, and that was another one of them. I had no idea that he'd had that experience. But he's the one that has had the most contact. And then I work with some ladies quite frequently that have had multiple contacts as well.
Do you think most abductees are getting abducted in the physical world, or during their sleep when they take their consciousness out of their body?
I think there's both. There's a how do I describe? Well, I'll tell you about an experience I had, and I don't believe it was a dream. I believe it was an actual contact. I was for years I had been making fun that I wanted the aliens to abduct me so I could get on their ship, and then I was going to take it over. I was going to commandeer the ship and fly wherever I wanted. I was a real smart aleck about it, and I did that on air. I did that to everybody I talked to. And then one night I love, when I'm traveling, I love to stay at the little roadside hotels, the motels that are shaped like an L. They were built in the 50s. Many of them had a swimming pool in the front, and a lot of times the swimming pool is gone, but you know the ones I'm talking about, they're just shaped like an L. And I love staying in those. And I'm in one of those, kind of in the middle of nowhere. I look out the back window, and it's just this field of crap. It's broken down vehicles. There's abandoned wash machines and refrigerators and stoves, just stuff thrown in the junkyard back there. And I watched a little bit of TV, went to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I wake up and that whole back wall where that window is that I was looking out is gone. It's wide open, and these aliens are walking in to have a conversation with me. And there was various size grays. There was an insect-looking one. There was a thing that looked kind of like a tumbleweed. Many different. There was the Nordic. There was, I don't know, like 6 or 7 different types of aliens, and they had me get out of bed. They surrounded me, and they let me know that it was not funny, me talking about being able to commandeer a ship from them, that it wasn't possible. They didn't appreciate it, and I needed to stop. And all the people that I'd talked to that had been abducted really were not happy with me making fun of that because of the experience they had, and these things weren't happy. And they told me to make sure you understand, you're going to be sick for 3 days. And I was violently sick for 3 days. I thought maybe I'd gotten radiation poisoning. It was so bad. And so since that time, I didn't even talk about it for a few years. But since that time, I do tell this story. But I want people to understand I'm not making fun of it, and I'm not saying I'm going to commandeer it. I just want you to know I had that experience. Many people would say that I probably dreamed it. I don't believe it was a dream, even though it happened, while I was asleep and then was woken up for it. I don't believe I was asleep. So I think there are things that happen in a metaphysical plane with these aliens, and I also believe that there's a lot of things that happen in the physical realm.
All right. So if people want to learn more about your book or your healing, do they go to your website?
Yes, if they go to slipstreamshaman.com, they can order the book through there. It actually will take you to the link on Amazon. There's a button there to do that. There's also an email link that you can reach out to me. You can go to my Instagram. And what I would encourage, if you like what we talked about today and want to know more, sign up on Instagram with me. Follow me on Instagram. That's where all the new stuff comes out. And then shoot me an email with your thoughts. If you want a healing, I do free healings. I don't charge at all. It's not a trick to get you to go to the website and do something else. It's a free healing that I do. I'm not going to ask you nor will I ask you for a donation. It's just something I do. I am a little bit behind, so we're looking about a month out right now. But please reach out, or if you just have a question, send me an email. You can do all that right at the website, slipstreamshaman.com, or if you want to order the book, it's a great way to go.
You also have a YouTube channel, right?
YouTube, if you search Slipstream Shaman, you'll find it. And there's also a link on that front page for also Instagram and YouTube.
All right. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
For me, it was about helping people. And I'm sure everybody out there is, especially if you're still looking for your purpose, just allow things to come, be open and listen. There's so much noise around us that if you get to that quiet place, whether you're meditating in traditional meditation, or if you go with the process I show you and create a quantum room and you meditate, really listen to what's out there that's going to come to you. And that's where the revelations come. That's how I learned what my purpose was. Everything's so noisy and fast right now. It's good to get quiet and listen, and you'll know when it's the right thing. It'll be a voice that you believe. It'll be a voice that sounds different. It won't be that same old voice in your head. It'll be different. It'll be stronger. It'll be right, and you'll know it. So get to a place where you can really get quiet and listen for that, and keep listening to great shows like this one, and having fun and opening your mind and being out there for things that are non-traditional.
Todd, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. It was an absolute blast. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.